Welcome to US Chess School class. This is Grandmaster Magesh Panchanathan. Good to see you all. Hello. Nice. Okay, so I think let's jump right into it. I had a tournament over the weekend, and it was a very interesting tournament, and I wanted to share some games from that tournament. And that's basically what I wanted to show today. I mean, I didn't have a very particular topic, but I thought it's nice to share some games because then I'll be able to discuss how I was thinking during the game and how I was making these decisions. I made some good decisions. I made some horrendous decisions. I can share all of that with you guys. Joshua, yes, I'm teaching at Castle Chess next week. I'm really super excited. I will be, I think, I don't know how the teaching structure has been done yet. I don't know exactly, but I do have I do have a homeroom, I believe. Yeah, so it's going to be fun. Who's going to Castle next week? I know hopefully a group of here are going to be in Emory. Joshua's there. She's like, I do sometimes. Well, Castle Chess Camp is the one that's organized in Emory University in Atlanta. It's a fun camp. I teach there pretty much every year. They do a great job. So, of course, last couple of years we didn't have anything because of the pandemic. So this year it's fun to go back in person. All right. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get started. I do have so I do notice that some of you might have seen this game. Actually, no, only one person I see in this class who might have seen this game, but I will try to make it more interesting with different questions, maybe. Heavy hand, no, you don't need to know. You don't need to know. Anyway, so let's get started, guys. We're going to discuss my game, of course, with some decision making, with also one important practical application. That is, I want to talk about time management. I want to talk about decision making, and I want to talk about how we do this in terms of practical play. Okay, so I will mix and match. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a game in which it worked brilliantly. I'm going to show you a game in which it absolutely failed. So it's just I just want to show both sides of it. Like most of the times when we talk about something, the solution is always finding the balance. Right? If you try to do anything to an extent where it's too much, you're probably going to suffer from it. So that's the point. I want to show you a couple of games where sometimes the decisions I made or what it did worked and some didn't. Right? Okay. All right. So this is the first one we look at. I was playing against a player rated around probably like 2050 or 2050 or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but I was playing white. And we played the first few moves very quickly, and we reached this position. And he had played d6. So first thing I could realize is that I had played the same position as white, actually in Charlotte. If I remember, it was against international master Joshua Stearman, and I won that game. But I also remember that the position was kind of equal, and at some point he made a mistake, and I won that game. So when I looked at my opponent play this, first thing I realized is he's probably prepared something against it. So I want to play something new. So I had played e5 in that game. So here I made a practical decision, didn't spend too much time. I made a practical decision to play c3. It's like, okay, very natural looking move, nothing special about it. I can always plan to play d4 in the future, right? And so here as I would expect, he started thinking a little bit. He's like, okay, obviously he's probably expecting e5. So he's thought a little bit. And naturally, I was also thinking at this time to say, okay, what could I expect him to play? A couple of moves popped up. Yeah. Yeah, Austin, actually, frankly, I don't know exactly the depth of this. So it's possible that c3 is bad. I made a very intuitive decision and played it very quickly, right? Actually, in this structure, I don't even know. You're right. I'll have to do more analysis. I played c3 very simply because I thought in the future, I can try d4, right? So That's very simple. And I also mainly wanted to take him out of the previous line that I had played, which is e5. So just two simple explanations. My opponent played knight to c6. And this was one of the main moves I had looked at. He probably could play knight to c6. He could have played a5. He could have played bishop e7. There were a few moves I had calculated. Knight to c6 was definitely on the top of that list. Yeah. So here, let's take some time and let's think about the position. What I want to do is I want to try to mimic this as much as possible to a real game. So if you're looking at it, right, I would let each one of you be your own decision maker. That is, you can make a decision on what you want to do in about 1 or 2 minutes. I would say not less than that, because you will need to grasp some parts of it, or you can take up to 10 minutes. Okay. And the decision is yours. Like how much time you want to use is your decision. Okay. So I will run a timer for 10 minutes, but when you feel like you're comfortable and you feel like, oh, I know exactly what I should be playing here, I've made a decision, just type in a move and say final next to it. So I will know that it is final. Austin has given me something final. Okay. So that was very quick. And it's fair enough. Remember, the reason I'm giving you this is there are two sides to the coin. There is such a thing as taking too much time in simple positions. You shouldn't do that either. If you have a simple idea and if you think it's reasonable, there is no reason to keep calculating and calculating and calculating. But at the same time, if you're not clear, you better take your time and think about it, right? So you need to know both ways. Vihan, you're typing to everyone. Yeah, thanks. If it's your final move, if you made a decision, please say that, because I know a lot of you are typing moves, giving me ideas. Okay, Eric has given a final move. Brian Wang, final. Is it final? Vihan has given something final. Adi has given final. So very interesting. I see about 6 or 7 of you have given your decision in less than 2 minutes. Okay. Megan has given it final. You can just give me one move, Madison. You don't have to give a full variation. If you think there is a variation, go for it. Okay, pretty reasonable explanation, Austin May. Okay, Madison has given me final. Well, Kyle, you've given me 2 moves. How is that possible? You have to give me only one move as a final. You're not playing both the moves. This was a G90 plus 32nd, and we have just basically started the game. So yeah, I mean, it's not much. Charles has given me something. Rishi has given me something. Okay, so Kyle, you have a plan. The first move is in that order. Okay. All right, guys. Anyone still think that you need a lot more time to think in this one? Because I feel like most of you have kind of given it to me. Most of them did. I still feel some of them are still thinking. That's why I asked the question. Anyone who still thinks that you need to spend more time? Okay. All right. So I guess since most of you have kind of given me a decision very quickly, I think I'm going to move on. I'm not going to spend any more time on this. So if some of you are still thinking, that's okay. We will reflect on what you were talking about. But mostly, I would say in this position, you do want to make a reasonably quick decision. It's not really a very heavily calculating kind of position, but there is definitely something interesting though. And it's not for the lack of any interesting thing. It's very early in the opening. You might think it's very dry, but it's actually kind of interesting. I got 2 or 3 of you gave me the move a5, which definitely caught my attention. Now, some of you gave e5, and some of you played rook e1. In fact, I would say rook e1 is a majority. I did see d4 as the first and second choice in some cases. I saw queen e2 in some cases. What else did we get? I think knight b d2 was another one, very natural developing move. We don't want to blitz, Vihan, right? We definitely don't want to blitz. Okay, fair enough. So look at this. We have 6 different moves to look at. And this is, again, a classic example of why candidate moves are what we want to do, right? When you are looking at it, you might just look at 1 or 2. When I'm looking at so many of you giving me moves, I see so many different interesting ideas, right? Now, I spent probably about 30 seconds in this move, not much. And I had already thought of an idea when knight c6 was played, because I was already thinking this looks interesting. And the interesting idea for me was a5, right? Obviously, a5 felt very interesting to me for 2 reasons. Can you type it in chat? So most of the time you pick a candidate move because it's exciting. You look at it, it's like something is happening, yeah? By the way, you're all typing it in group chat, guys. Let's switch to private chat, please. Thank you. Definitely a6, right? Is one of the things. Anything else that is exciting at a5? Roger, absolutely right. I think I'm also interested in queen a4 and e5. Okay, I'm going to change this setting for now. I think some of you are accidentally changing the chat to group chat. I'm just, towards the end, I'll open it for you guys to chat with each other. For now, it's just me you'll have to talk to, sorry. Okay, so queen a4, of course, with the idea of e5 or d4 is very, very interesting, right? So I do like this a5 idea followed by queen a4 and a6. So both the things look very, very interesting to me. So I thought, okay, this has to be the move I should calculate. Now, sometimes you see a move and you definitely want to calculate what your opponent's response is by force and then think about it and then make the move. But sometimes you feel like it's practically okay, so I might just do it. I feel like it seems like an intuitively good move, so I'll play it. I don't see anything majorly going wrong with it, particularly because I thought at some point e5 will happen. My opponent is allowing it, and I think at some point it'll happen. There's one danger with a5, which I was kind of aware of. If e5 doesn't happen, if let's say a6 happens, and at some point in the future d5 happens, I would say that pawn gets a little awkward, and I think it might even become a weak pawn. Yeah, so I might be overextended. I mean, that pawn might be overextended, and I would be worried. But one thing that did comfort me is the fact that I thought I could always play e5 into this pawn structure, and when I do that, the c4 square becomes available for me. And if c4 is available, usually the a5 pawn is going to be reasonably safe, right? And it's going to stop him from playing a6 and all those things. So I was okay with that. So I played a5 reasonably fast. What do you guys think would be black's best response? Again, I'm going to give you some time. Let's think a little bit about what is black's best response. Do some candidate moves again, as always. Even if it's only 2 or like even if it's 2, maybe 3, whatever it is, try to look at some options and then decide. So Rishi, just think about your calculation here. There's nothing wrong with that. Rashid's black smooth that I'm asking, not white smooth. And try to do some candidate moves, all of you. And I'm also kind of curious. Actually, I'm going to do this, right? Even if you don't make the main decision, I want to see how intuitively you guys are thinking. So let's say 2 or 3 candidate moves. And at the end of 3 minutes, I want each one of you to say which move is the main move you're going to calculate, or which move you've decided is the best. Either you can tell me either one at that point. But in 2 or 3 minutes, I would expect all of you to at least zone into the main calculation. Okay. So Madison, your second move, I'm not a big fan for black. I wouldn't really consider that. With the king being in the center, I'm not so sure if black wants to do that, right? Yeah, fair enough. That other move is definitely possible. Megan, I think, yes, you can consider those moves. Eric, yes. Yes, that's possible. By the way, I do mention this in all my classes. Unfortunately, these days, try not to use the engine. Try not to, look through the game or anything like that. It's waste of your time and waste of everyone else's time. And I would know more than anything else. Okay. So unfortunately, we've had to make these kind of announcements in all my classes. Okay, so we're getting close at this point. If you guys have zoned on to one move that you are interested in calculating, you can put that move. I mean, if you already put that in chat, then you don't need to. But if you have seen some candidate moves, the reason I'm asking this is because most of the time, if you spend about 10 minutes to 15 minutes calculating, you need to zone on to the real problem very quickly, like in the first 2-3 minutes. That way you will spend a majority of your calculation in what is very relevant. Okay, very good. So what I've gotten so far is a6, bishop a6, d5. I wouldn't. Again, d5 and bc3 are the moves I was talking about earlier. And I'm not so sure I would do that because black's king is in the center. Bishop e7 is being considered. That would be basically black saying, I ignore white's threat. I don't mind you playing a6. Knight takes a5 being considered. Okay, I got rook c8 and rook b8 as 2 different moves. Okay, very good. So now, hopefully in your mind, you've all decided what you're going to calculate, right? Even if you didn't type it in chat, keep this in mind because I always talk about this. Your majority of the battle in your calculation is done in these first 2 to 3 minutes, right? What happens in fact, it happened in my game too, when I will show you about my next game and show you about some problems. You spend 10 minutes, you spend 8 minutes or 9 minutes in a move that's absolutely irrelevant to the position. And you spend like 1 minute sometimes in a move that is most important. And then you make a decision around it. And that's how usually you just go really wrong. And what I tell my students is that if you actually are spending 7 minutes in a particular move, which was very important, there's a very, very high chance you're actually going to figure it out. You're going to actually find out what the moves are, the calculation is, and you're also probably going to evaluate it pretty reasonably, right? The biggest problem is eliminating the junk. You see some candidate moves, you see some things, and first part of this process is to say, oh, this is what is interesting. So I made this decision again super fast. So this game, the whole game I was playing very intuitively, right? I was not calculating, I was intuitively making decisions. And I had not expected the best move to be the right move. I was expecting a6. Unfortunately, a lot of you are calculating a6, not a good move. It turns out in the game, I actually felt this, right? What I felt during the game was I felt a6 was the move I had to calculate. I was calculating that, but I also didn't like a6 for black. So to be precise, I hadn't solved the problem for black, and I didn't need to because my opponent played a6 at some point. He did take some time though, maybe 6-7 minutes of thinking, and then he played a6. So I didn't need to solve all the other problems. I was calculating a6 probably a majority of the time, right? So it worked out beautifully for me. But to be precise, I think a couple of you made some good decisions, which would be to try to move the rook. Rook b8 or rook c8 are actually very reasonable ideas. I like the idea of rook b8, particularly because you're also keeping an eye on this bishop. That means when e5 kind of move happens, the bishop doesn't hang, right? I think Austin May, you were explaining that particular point. Not bad. Rook c8 is not a problem. It's also equally interesting because after a6, you pull the bishop back, and that pawn at that point is definitely overextended. Yeah, it'll be too much. But okay, my opponent played a6. So let's move on with that. Again, practical advantages of your decision. So what worked beautifully for me is that I played a5 and I started thinking after that. I could have done all the calculation in my time, but I didn't because I felt a5 was practically a decent move, so I'm going to play it. And it turns out it's a very good choice because my opponent had to find something very good to equalize, which is not so obvious, right? So it became like a very good choice overall. I don't know if I can say that I understood all of that. But anyway, so now I already have some plan, right? What is the next move I should play? Well, what again? You guys can do some candidate moves. You can tell me what exactly you want to play already. Again, if you think that your move's already final, you can give me a final move. But I will always give you a few minutes to think. Kevihan has given me a couple of ideas. Yes, Rishi, it's white to move. You should not be asking me this question. You're looking through the game. Kevin has given me something. Frankly, I probably considered two main moves and one move stuck out. Okay, Rishi has given something. Madison has given me a couple of moves. You have to tell me which one is the final move when you're ready, Madison. Okay. What do you guys think? Is this the kind of position that you should be taking a lot of time? Vihan is saying yes, definitely. Why, Vihan? Because we know the plan, because we make decisions. Here's the deal, right? When you sense that your opponent has done something wrong, or when you sense your opponent's position is tough, you should always play only when you feel like you have solved your problems, right? I would never make a move in this position if I feel like I don't know what I will do after this move or that move, then I would not play a move at this point, right? Because I'm already beginning to feel like my opponent's position is uncomfortable. I will play it if I feel I'm very comfortable. This move looks good and I don't see how it can go wrong. I can definitely do that intuitively, but I will have some calculation to say, okay, I'm okay with all the responses that I'm seeing. So the answer can be mixed in terms of what time you should take, right? Like if you are comfortable already in the first minute and you have seen everything and you feel like there is no surprises, then yes, you can make a very quick decision. So for now, let's see. I'm going to kind of get everyone to make a decision. So why don't all of us make a decision now, even if you're not ready? Let's make it intuitive. What move would you play here? Okay, so Roger, Eric, Megan, Austin, May. All right. The move I played and I was very interested was Queen A4. Now, Knight BD2 and Queen A4 seems to be the most considered moves. Looks like some of you want to also play E5. I think E5 and Knight BD2 were always there for me. I could have always done that, right? But given that the king is in the center, I'm not such a big fan of this. I'll tell you that, right? This would be a good move on a regular day. I'm developing my pieces. I'm going towards C4. Maybe I'm going towards that. But it's not too big for me because there's always Knight D7, which protects the key square. Black is going to go Bishop E7 and castle, right? But Queen A4, on the other hand, I felt is a little interesting because I am combining a couple of different diagonals and creating a lot of pressure here. And now those who wanted to play E5, I think E5 is going to be, again, much stronger with the queen on A4, right? So, and also I'm keeping an eye on this pawn. When I take on B4, there's no more knight B4. He's literally forced to do pawn takes B4, as long as there's a pin, of course. I see some of you are asking question about what if black plays this or that. Let's talk about it, right? Because my opponent gave me 6 or 7 minutes, I was able to calculate some parts of it. And I had figured out what I was going to do against most of the responses, right? Let's play Queen A4. What are the candidate moves for black? Someone has already suggested Queen D7. Some have suggested Knight D7. Anything else? Anything else that you guys feel like is interesting that we need to look at? Bishop E7. Okay, anything else? Austin is saying, I'm the guy who's always watching my friends' games when I walk, when I play my move. It's not always a bad practice depending on what and when you're doing it. So usually you get up from your game when we need some fresh air, when you're tired or something like that. I don't think you should always be walking around. Having said that, in my last tournament, probably those who saw me playing probably saw me walking around a lot because my opponents were thinking a lot in my defense. And I was like up like 40 minutes or 1 hour. And I had made my decisions, again, in my defense. So, and also one more defense is coaches can do whatever they want. Yeah. So I got rook C8, I guess. What else? What else? B takes C3 again. So I'm not a big fan of this move. I think it opens up the position more. I mean, black should be a little worried about this king, right? I mean, I don't know if I can take with the knight or with the pawn. Doesn't really matter for me. I feel like it just opens a little bit more. I'm not a big fan. C4. I don't know if you're talking about C4 for black. I don't think black can do C4. Joshua wants to play King E7 to get out of the pin. Very interesting idea. But we're going to just say ignore it for now. Okay, so the moves I considered mainly were this, and probably this move. Yeah. I mean, I also maybe briefly considered Knight D7 a little bit. But I did want to calculate Queen D7, you know. That did turn out to be one of the main moves I looked at. The first move I solved, I'll put it this way. The first problem I tried to solve was Queen D7. Because I felt it breaks the pin, stops my plan to try to do some E5, and gets ready for black to go Bishop E7 and castle. And maybe the whole idea that white went on this side is pretty useless. And also, it also stops me from playing CB4. Like, I can't even play this. This is one of the ideas I had all along. I can just take, and maybe attack the pawn, right? I can put some pressure on the pawn. Or take, and then I go like some Bishop E3, or I go D4. I play in the center, and that pawn on B4 becomes a little bit weak, right? And I feel like I've already achieved something. So for that reason, I first solved Queen D7, and let's all do that. How would you solve Queen D7? The minute you see it, Austin is saying something. I'm hoping that it's more of a pattern, like tactical pattern. You have positional patterns, you have ideas. Hopefully that clicks. And we've already discussed something in this session already about something here that should help you make the decision really quick. And I was like immediately ready. Like I saw Queen D7 in my head. I was like, okay, that's the move. What do I do? I'm like doing a little bit of scanning through the moves. And there's one move that I felt perfect. I'm happy. Joshua, that's definitely the direction. Beyond that's one of my candidate moves, but not Madison, the same thing, candidate move. Eric Liu, absolutely right. You're spot on. So think of it this way, everyone. When you're looking at a move and you're not so sure if it's right or wrong, ask yourself, can black simply go bishop e7 and castle after your move? If black can, then I don't think your move is going to be helping as much. You play with initiative right now. Your opponent's king is in the center and you have this teeny tiny bit of initiative. Well, e5 is very much possible. I'll put it this way, e5 and d4 were my candidate moves. And e5 will probably run into knight takes e5, and you have to calculate that variation. It looks interesting, but you have to calculate that. Roger, that's right, spot on. This is not very challenging. I think it's very straightforward in terms of, I won't even call it positional or attack. I think it's kind of a mixture of both. So some of you have already given me the move, so let's go ahead and talk about it. The minute I see the queen on d7, the rook on a8, what comes to our mind? I'm sure all of you play bug house. If you're playing bug house right here, what would you be asking your partner? You would be asking, you'd be yelling for a knight, you'd be calling for a knight, yeah? Be like, give me a knight, I want to put it on b6. Let's go, right? And then you want to get that fork going. So that's the point, yeah? So you go knight d2, knight c4, and knight b6. You see, you can learn a lot by playing bug house. So knight d2, knight c4, knight b6. Once I saw it, I was very happy, and I said, okay, I'm going to do this, because after knight d2, by the way, my opponent played queen d7 in the game. He spent about 7 or 10 minutes playing this. By then, I had already calculated queen d7. I was calculating bishop e7 or rook c8 kind of moves. Actually, mostly bishop e7, right? No, Joshua, I thought I told you you're on the right track, no? I might have made a mistake. My bad. I know you did play knight bd2. It was definitely the right track. So queen d7, knight bd2, he goes bishop e7, and I go knight c4. Now you see he's not able to castle. And that's already a reason why I like it. The second reason I like it is because he has stopped himself from playing knight d7. This is what we had talked about early on when some of you wanted to go knight d2, knight c4, knight b6 without playing queen a4. That didn't look too challenging for me because black was playing knight d7, right? So now it makes all the difference because the queen is sitting on d7, right? Making it a lot more comfortable uncomfortable for black. So he has to move the queen or the rook. He moves the rook. I put my knight on b6 and queen c7. At this point, I'm super happy with my position. I feel like I'm winning. And I was right, because not only did I get my knight to b6, black is still not castled. Black still needs one more move to do it, while I have so much pressure and so many different ideas to probably continue the attack. So probably one last question in this particular game before we move on to the next one. What do you think what should do here? When you are up, you should be ruthless and you should be absolutely crushing. Like you don't give your opponent any chances. There could be 3 or 4 good moves, but it's always good to go for the best. Austin May, good. Vihan, good. Megan, Rishi, Ryan. Again, I like that idea. It was not that crushing. That's definitely one of my candidate moves. Eric Leo, that's right. Rishi, that's right. Kyle, that move's interesting, but again, not crushing enough. So I'm going to tell all of you right now, because some of you are giving me this, e5 and d4 are very much part of my candidate moves. But I was not. First of all, e5, for example, I think black can go knight d7 and do what I want to do. That is the trading of that knight. If you play pawn takes d6, I go bishop takes d6. And it's not too convincing to me. I think white is probably better. Maybe I can take on d6 from knight c4. But yeah, it didn't feel like I'm just crushing and winning that. I needed more, right? This is actually a very interesting point. How you evaluate your position is how you will also accept a variation that comes out of it, right? So, for example, if you have a mate in one in a position, you will not be happy to just win a pawn or even win a bishop, right? Or I can give you a perfectly different example where you would be very happy to win a pawn. So that's theory of relativity in chess over the chessboard, yeah? So Kevin, you're right. Madison still going to allow castle and not create a strong breakthrough. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and look through it. Again, I was able to solve this very quickly, but if you didn't solve it in a game very quickly, I would say this is the kind of position where you sit and make sure you find the best one. When you have a winning position on the board, right? When you feel like your opponent has done something wrong and you have a winning position, you have to solve it, right? At that point, like just kind of playing a random move or playing something that you feel like you're winning is criminal. Please don't do that, right? I've seen that too many times because that's exactly how you lose an advantage. You can put pressure on the clock. You can be practical when the position is equal. When you're not winning, you have to create chances. Do all those things. Apply pressure on the clock, right? Try to play fast, think in your opponent's time. But if I give you a winning position, at that point, everything is in your hands, right? You decide literally on your hands, right? On your terms. If you play the best move, you win the game, it's over. You don't have to worry about anything else. At that point, you don't need to think about, all these things that we talked about. Like you don't need to, say, think during, you should think during your opponent's turn, but play fast and, add these practical problems to your opponent. Here, you're winning. So the answer is C takes B4. Very straightforward. I open the C file. The minute that the queen went to C7, my eyes lit up. It's like I'm super excited for this. Only decision I had to make is where do I move my bishop? Some of you suggested D2, E3, or F4. I was going to play bishop F4, but then I expected knight to D7 to happen anyway. So I thought, okay, why not just put it on E3? Right? It's not attacking anything, but I'll just put it here. Castle, rook C1. And believe it or not, my opponent's position is lost. It's only 16 moves, already lost, game over. And I'm threatening to play knight D4, and he is losing material, which he cannot stop. He actually played something like D5. I could still play knight D4. I actually played something even better because I had bishop F4. Interestingly, I had anticipated D5 too. So I played bishop F4, and now he's lost. Bishop D6, I have E5. And if E5, I have knight takes E5. Right? So this was a classic example of every single decision that my opponent made. I guessed it right. I was ready. So I barely spent any time, or it looked like I was playing fast, but what I was doing was I had spent 20 minutes of calculation in this game. The only difference is that was the time that for my opponent. He was thinking, and then I was using the time. Because I was guessing his moves so well, I didn't have to spend more time thinking for new moves. I was like, okay, this is the move he's going to play, including this last move. I felt like he was going to play D5, then I had already decided to play bishop F4. So it was so easy, yeah? All right, now let's talk about what happens when things go bad, yeah? So let's move to the next game. Okay, I'm going to resume the sharings. All right, so this is the next game I'm going to talk about. This is actually the very next game in the tournament. So first game I won, the second game I'm playing against another. This one is probably like a 2150 player. And I was playing black. So my opponent had played very solid chess. So he played the exchange Roy Lopez. And we have, as you can see, a very solid position. White has very strong center. It's also reasonably closed, and the knights are doing pretty good. But to give you a little bit of a background, I had played some comfortable moves. I was very happy in this position because at this point I had like 1 hour and 10 minutes in the clock. We started with 1 hour 30 minutes, and my opponent had something like 30 minutes. So I was up 40 minutes in the clock, And I had already planned a little bit in this position. I put my bishop on e6, I put my bishop on g5. And I felt like it's very comfortable. It's very difficult for black to lose this. Even though I felt like white's also very comfortable, right? Objectively, this position has to be equal. I don't think, I mean, if it's anything, it's actually white that has to be slightly better. But the fact that I was up on time, I was 40 minutes ahead, and my opponent was like, underrated than me. I was confident. I was like, okay, I should be able to outplay him, right? Slowly. And at some point, maybe you'll go into time trouble and you'll make some mistakes. So that's the kind of situation we are in here, yeah? And I had thought about something. So at this point, my opponent started thinking maybe like 3-4 minutes. I don't remember exactly how much. And he made an interesting decision. So can you guess what white played here? Not too difficult to guess. A move that white can play. Austin May, no, definitely you cannot play c6. c6 is an extremely weakening move. Yeah, you cannot do that. It allows the d6 square to be weak. It allows the b6 pawn to be weak. Very rarely you would play c6 when white is occupying the d file. Vihan, that's also a structurally bad idea. I think, Eric, you're also saying this. So remember this, just look at the pawn structure. White has majority on the king side, 3 versus 2, right? This is where white can create a pass pawn. And one of the reasons why this exchange Ruy Lopez has the slight advantage for white is because black's pawn structure is bad, right? So if you undouble my pawns, then you have kind of made it easier. Like you made my life easier, right? So I know, I want you to play interesting, not necessarily equals bad. Megan, are you playing a move for white or black? It's white's turn. I'm trying to see if you can anticipate white's move. Rishi, that's right. Madison, that's right. That's what my opponent played also. B4 is no. Roger, yeah, that's right. G3 is very dangerous, guys. G3, you're allowing some rook h2 at some point. You have to be very careful. Or you're also allowing some attack on the f3 pawn. Very dangerous. I wouldn't play G3. All right, I got at least 2 of them have given me, or 3 of them have given me the move that was played, knight f6. There are a lot of normal moves that can be played, and I was not actually thinking about all of those moves. Of course, there's a4, there's, you even play g3. I'm not actually worried about it. He's never going to be able to play f4. He cannot play rook h1. So whatever other moves he plays, I go bishop g5 next. So the file becomes mine. The next move I go is bishop e6. And then what I'm going to do, I have to decide. Maybe my king will come up. Maybe I will try to play b5 at some point and try to expand on the queen side. Given that my advantage is on the queen side, most likely that's what I will try to do, yeah. But I had anticipated this move. This is a little interesting, knight f6. And what do you think black should play? All of you can put it in chat. What are you thinking? What are you expecting? Joshua, I don't think you can play that move, can you? You're dropping a piece after knight f6. So I'm asking you, what is the move after knight f6 for white? Ryan Mang, I like what you're suggesting. That's definitely the most important move to calculate, yeah? Yeah, I realized that, Joshua. That's why I was trying to explain that to you. Austin May, very good. That's a good point. But that is definitely the move you have to calculate. Right, so most of you are telling me I can play bishop e6, which is absolutely fine. So after bishop e6, for example, the knight on f6 is hit, right? So let's say knight f6, bishop e6, the knight on f6 is under attack. And if you go back to d5, okay, nothing happened, it's fine. If you go back to g4, I was thinking I can play bishop f4, and I save this pawn. And it's not easy to play g3 because there's always bishop takes e3 and then some rook h2 check. So I think Austin May was pointing out, the only bishop I was worried about was this one. I'm usually not worried about this one. I'm more worried about this one. If this bishop gets traded and I'm left with the f4 bishop, I might be in trouble. But here I was not feeling that, because I felt at any given moment I should be able to trade and it shouldn't be too bad. Yeah. And yes, Roger, I can also take on e3 and go bishop e6. Yeah, that's also pretty equal. I can already trade it, but I was thinking of keeping the bishops on the board a little longer. And I felt it cannot hurt me because this knight is not going anywhere. If it moves, I will take on g4. Yeah. So I was kind of okay with this. I was like, okay, this is one thing I can do. And obviously white cannot do this move, because then I think this knight will basically be lost with bishop g5 or something. So I don't see any tactical ways to get around it. So that is the thing I was calculating. But there is a critical move, guys. There is another move for black, right? Very important move. And you should calculate this, whether it works or it doesn't work. So far, only 2 people have given me that move. Ryan Wang and Austin May are the only 2 people who have given me that move. Eric Liu, yes, correct. Roger Zhang, no good. Austin May, you're right. You can definitely do that. You did not consider that last time. Nothing, Rishi. We are still continuing the same discussion. What other important move that does black have? Bishop takes e3 check will only make the same situation. I'll take with the king, and then you still have to make the same decision, right? Nothing changes much with bishop takes e3 check. Well, you don't want to trade both the rooks, both the pieces, and allow the rook on d7. Yeah, that's too strong. So the move you should have thought about is bishop a4. All of you can't miss a forcing move. Somebody's dropping a piece to win your piece back. The first thing that should come to your mind is, can I use my piece that's under attack to do a counter attack? Because it makes it a double attack, right? Bishop a4 will make white's position in a double attack. And white has only one move, which is b3. And I can simply take that pawn, because I get to win this knight anyways. So don't I simply win a pawn, right? So here's what my calculation is. I go bishop a4. He plays b3. I take. And now, of course, I can take this, but I'll be left with the bad bishop. So I might as well take that. And I take this one. Black is up a pawn, right? What do you guys think? What is the evaluation? How do you feel about this? Should we go into this one? Should we not go into this one? We should go into it. It's interesting. We should absolutely not go into this because you lost. Well, how do you know I lost, Rehan? And how do you know I actually went into this? Bit worried about rook d7, rook g7. We should go into this because we are up a pawn. I did say that I failed in my second game. I kind of gave it away. Okay, so not bad, right? The evaluation. So here's what I felt. I was not actually happy. I don't think I can win this position. Objectively, this cannot be winning for black. Even though black is up a pawn, it looks too strong. White's rooks are getting in. I'm going rook e7. I'm going rook g7. And I'm showing rook d5. She's saying coaches never show games they lost. Well, we learn a lot from our losses, even today, right? And I like to talk about both of them, because the problem is when you talk about one aspect, you all think that's magical and that's the best way to win games. But sometimes you use the same kind of thinking and you make terrible mistakes too. And that's the reality of life, and you guys should see it, right? So anyways, rook d7. Now, I was pretty sure this is, not easy for me to win, yeah? Because the rooks are too strong. I'm not comfortable. Now, on the other hand, I have been building good momentum in this endgame all along. So if I go bishop e6, the status quo remains. Nothing changes. The bishops remain, the knights remain. We keep playing for a few more moves. Maybe I can add some time trouble on his clock by playing fast moves. It's possible. So practical decision, bishop e6, right? Now here's what I couldn't tell. I didn't know if my opponent had blundered. By playing knight f6, he missed bishop a4 completely, right? And he just didn't even know he's losing a pawn. Or he actually sacrificed a pawn to go into an endgame with the two rooks where he has activity, right? So I'm wondering, it's like, what is happening here? Is he just blundering, right? And this was unfortunately a big problem for me, right? He's a 2150, but actually the way he played and the way he did, it looks like he actually saw it in his defense. I think it looks like he actually saw that bishop a4 is happening and he was completely fine with it. Now, maybe he saw it after he played the move, doesn't matter, but he did see it at some point. He was a 2150, and yes, unfortunately, I lost my game against this person. But anyways, let's go on. Yeah. So first mistake, I play bishop a4. I think I need to show my opponent that my opponent made a mistake, right? And I go bishop a4. I regret this already, and I was regretting this during the game in just literally 2-3 moves. b3 was played, bishop takes b3, takes, bishop takes, king takes, rook takes f6, rook d7. So here I started thinking a little bit more. Okay, how do I put my rooks to defend? And this is where I felt I should have already not done this, right? In a few minutes, I was thinking, okay, this is probably going to end up in a draw because my rooks are too passive, his rooks are too active, and again, my king side pawns very weak. Rook e7, rook g7, right? How do I defend this? I spent some time and I went to a critical point. I started with rook h2, and then I created a small configuration. So I wanted to play this. By the way, one of my main ideas was to play b5. Like, how do I win this one? How do I see myself win this one? Well, I have to play in my majority, right? When I play b5, he takes, I'm very happy because this pawn will run, right? If he doesn't take, I take on a4 and I queen the a pawn, or I try to queen the a pawn, right? So this is my counterplay, and I had to set up the rooks in the best way for this, right? So I thought about it a little bit. I did rook e6, rook h5. So this was my setting. So the rook guards this one, and this one's guarding this one. And if they touch the pawn, I want to get in quickly and try to bother this one, yeah? Most importantly, now I'm playing b5. Yeah, the rook on c6 does look very passive, but I have a very strong threat. I play b5 and I take, and I go a5 and I go rook a6. So this looks pretty nice, yeah? My opponent plays rook d5. And here I spent 21 minutes and played the worst possible move ever. First, obviously, if I go rook e6, we have a sort of a draw. And ironically, that's the longest I spent in any move in the whole tournament. I won 4 games, I lost 1. And the only move I spent the longest, I made the most horrendous decision in my games. So no, I didn't play rook g5. Come on. I didn't play like a tactical one move blunder where he just wins. Actually, is it? Oh yeah, rook g5, g4, I think I can resign. My rook never comes out. So here's my thought process. I just want to quickly explain this before I show you what I did, right? So my main idea, of course, was to play b5. So the variation I'm calculating is b5, rook e7, takes, and rook takes e5. And now I take on e5. Wait, a5, rook takes e5, rook takes e5, rook takes e5, and a4. So I'm like a little excited about this position, right? Because my pawn is running, and this rook is kind of stuck in the middle. No easy way to get back. So the only move I figured is kind of rook d6. Rook e8 check only helps my king go closer. Rook d5. Now I had seen a couple of moves. I can play a3, a2, and then maybe the rook goes in and I go rook a6. Yeah. So my evaluation was, I think I can hold. I was actually worried. I felt like these pawns can be dangerous. But I also felt like there might be chances too, right? I mean, this is a kind of position where black might make a mistake and lose, or white might make a mistake and lose, but you feel like objectively they should be able to make a draw, right? And I felt like I evaluated this correctly, something like along those lines. It's like, okay, should be about equal. I should be able to make a draw, but I don't really get that feeling I'm going to win this one. Yeah, at least not without my opponent blundering something outright. Yeah. So the next interesting idea I had was this move. And the whole point is when he takes the pawn, I go king b7. And I kind of try to stop him from going back. Right? He goes rook a5, I go rook a6, he go rook b5, I go rook b6, I try to trade the rooks off. Yeah. But then at some point I realized, actually for maybe a couple of minutes, king b7, I thought was very exciting and I might be winning. But then I realized he can simply play check and go right back. And yet another draw. I go rook d6, he goes rook b5, I go here, and I don't see much happening. I mean, if I push, the same story. Yeah. Maybe this. Here, slightly different, my rook will be on b2. I still think black should be able to hold. So I'm calculating all of this, not super happy. I don't have a clear win. I do want to push the a pawn. So at this point, I'm convinced that I want a battle between my a pawn against his pawns here to give myself a chance to win the game, right? So after calculating all of this, of course, then I come up with another idea. Why not I try this one? Maybe rook h1, rook b1, and I take this one, right? So I go rook h1, he takes on e5, I go rook b1. Now, maybe he goes rook g5, I take on b3, he takes on g6, rook takes, right? And at this point, again, my a pawn starts to run. He has 3 connected pass pawns. That looks very, very dangerous. The only problem is his rook might not be able to catch up my pawn easily. I might be able to push that pawn really fast. I'm thinking, worst case, I can still probably make a draw, right? It's still not like completely gone. Looks dangerous, but I should probably make a draw, right? And then I played. So here's the problem. In 20 minutes, I probably spent 15, 16, 17 minutes, whatever the amount of time, calculating b5. Everything I spent, I put my effort into b5. I wanted to make it win, and I couldn't. And it was a draw. And I ended up playing rook h1. The simplest blunder, I'll tell you, right? In fact, I was trying to make sense of this. If you look at the position, if you take one look at the position, you can tell this is ridiculous for black, right? I mean, like, how can black look at the rook on c6? It looks so bad. And I have 1 pass pawn compared to my opponent's 3 connected pass pawns. So if you think practically, this just doesn't make any sense, right? And most importantly, I missed a very important idea. I forgot the distinction between having 2 rooks on the board and 1 rook on the board. My opponent simply kept both the rooks on the board. He didn't take the pawn, and a pawn is useless. He simply pushed this, right? I mean, if I take and I push, he goes rook here. He stops my pawn. He probably is even checkmating me. So that's it. Game over. I'm lost. So one big puddle of calculation, but the decision was bad in the end, right? So hopefully there are a few things you can learn. I mean, I'll show this also a little bit, like after b5. Yeah, the c6 rook is absolutely trapped. That's why e5 is such a good move. Otherwise, I could at least try rook d6, yeah? So e5 now, I in fact was in such a bad situation that I couldn't even take the pawn on b3. I played check and I came back here. The whole idea for me to go rook h1 was to go try grab that pawn. I came running back to defend the pawn now, but it was too late. Something like this happened. I tried pushing the pawn, but with 2 rooks on the board, he let me go all the way to a3. It doesn't matter because rook g8. And check, eventually rook a8, and now my position is just lost. So here I resigned. So hopefully some kind of practical, lesson from this is that first, of course, if you spend too much time in one variation and then end up playing the other move, it's always dangerous, right? We talked about this in the first game. We talked about this in the second game, right? The second thing is most of your calculation is only good if you make the right evaluation. Like my calculation was really good. I think most places, I think I judged things correctly. When I came back, I checked with engine, is like those end games that I thought were a draw were actually a draw. The moves that I was calculating were very reasonable in every sense. And this one ridiculous decision because I thought I really was desperate to win the game. And that's the reason, right? Sometimes you're completely off when you're trying too much to do something. But anyways, it's a lesson. So hopefully all of you had learned something. And we'll keep it a secret that I lost to a 2150 within this classroom. Yeah, it doesn't have to go outside this classroom. But actually, I realized we're broadcasting this in YouTube, aren't we? Okay. All right, guys. I think this is a good place for us to wrap it up. Yeah.